Park Ranger Corey Fletcher had no idea who he was about to handcuff at the base of Mount Rushmore. He thought he was dealing with just another suspicious character in a bright jacket. But in the hours that followed, one federal badge would be permanently removed. The National Park Service would write a check for millions, and the real victim, a quiet, patriotic American hero, would finally receive the recognition and justice he had earned decades earlier. Before I continue, let me ask you this. Have you ever been stopped or questioned by someone in authority simply because of the way you looked or the color of your skin? Drop your honest answer in the comments right now. I rate every single one. Kelvin Ingram was born on a cold January morning in 1948 in a small working-class neighborhood of Gary, Indiana. His parents, both factory workers who had migrated north during the Great Migration, raised him and his 3 younger siblings in a modest 2-bedroom home where dinner was always shared around a crowded table, and respect for the American flag was taught before he could even read. From a young age, Kelvin stood out as the quiet, helpful boy who mowed lawns for elderly neighbors without asking for payment, carried groceries for single mothers, and never once missed a day of school even when the family could barely afford shoes. Teachers remembered him as the student who sat in the front row, took meticulous notes, and dreamed aloud about one day seeing the country he loved from coast to coast. At 17, right after high school graduation in 1966, Kelvin made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He walked into the Army recruiting office and signed up. "I want to serve the nation that gave my family a chance," he told his mother that evening, his voice steady even as tears welled in her eyes. Basic training at Fort Knox tested every ounce of his strength, but Kelvin never complained. He graduated top of his platoon in marksmanship and physical endurance. By early 1968, he was on a plane to Vietnam, assigned to the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. The jungles of Vietnam became Kelvin's crucible. He saw combat in the brutal battles around Lai Key and during the Tet Offensive. One night in May 1969, his squad was ambushed near the Cambodian border. Enemy fire pinned them down for 6 hours. Kelvin, then only 21, crawled through mud and gunfire to drag 2 wounded comrades to safety. He took a bullet to the shoulder doing it, but refused morphine until the others were evacuated. For that act of bravery, he received the Bronze Star with Valor device. Months later, during a reconnaissance patrol, shrapnel from a mortar round tore into his left leg. The Purple Heart that followed joined the growing collection of medals he would one day pin to his jacket with quiet pride. He never spoke much about the horrors he witnessed, but those who served with him later said Kelvin was the calm voice in the chaos, the one who shared his last ration of water and wrote letters home for soldiers who could not read or write. Discharged honorably in 1970 at age 22, Kelvin returned to Indiana carrying invisible scars that many veterans still battle today. He struggled with nightmares and sudden loud noises, yet he refused to let the war break him. Instead of bitterness, he chose gratitude. In 1975, he earned his commercial driver's license and began a 38-year career as a long-haul trucker, crisscrossing the 48 states in an 18-wheeler he named Lady Liberty. Colleagues on the road still tell stories about the time in 1987 when Kelvin pulled over on an icy stretch of I-80 in Wyoming to help a stranded family whose car had slid into a ditch. He gave them his own blanket, drove their kids to a truck stop for hot chocolate, and waited 3 hours until a tow truck arrived, all while refusing any payment. Another time in '99 outside Tulsa, he spent his entire layover repairing the engine of an elderly woman's broken down sedan so she could make it to her granddaughter's wedding. Kelvin married his high school sweetheart, Loretta, in 1973. Together they raised 3 children who all went on to college, something he called his greatest achievement. Today he has 6 grandchildren who know him as Papa Kel, the man who never misses a birthday call no matter which state his rig is rolling through. At 72 years old in 2020, Kelvin remained remarkably fit, standing 6'1" with broad shoulders, short salt and pepper hair, and a warm, easy smile that could light up a rest area at midnight. He wore a bright crimson jacket everywhere, the back emblazoned with a large American flag patch, and the front displaying his carefully polished medals, the Bronze Star, Purple Heart, National Defense Service Medal, and Vietnam Service Medal. People often stopped him to shake his hand and thank him for his service. Kelvin would simply nod, eyes glistening, and say, "I was just doing what any American would do." He had saved every penny from his trucking years and retired comfortably in 2013, yet he kept driving part-time because, as he told friends, the road still feels like home. Kelvin was the kind of man who pulled over for every broken-down motorist, who donated blood every 8 weeks, and who visited national monuments whenever his road allowed, camera in hand, because he believed every American should see the places that tell our shared story. On that particular August day in 2020, he had driven his personal pickup all the way from his home in Rapid City just to spend a few peaceful hours at Mount Rushmore, photographing the towering faces of the presidents he had fought to protect. Before I continue with the rest of this story, let me know in the comments if you have ever met a veteran like Kelvin, someone whose quiet kindness makes you proud to be American. Type respect if you believe true heroes still walk among us. Corey Fletcher was born in 1985 in a small town outside Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Growing up in a household where his father worked as a county deputy and his mother was a part-time dispatcher, Corey heard stories of law enforcement from the dinner table every night. He was taught early that authority deserved respect, no questions asked. By high school, he was already wearing the Junior Police Explorer uniform, riding along on weekend shifts, dreaming of the day he'd carry a real badge. He graduated with average grades, but perfect attendance at every police youth event. After 2 years at a community college studying criminal justice, he applied to the National Park Service in 2008 and was hired as a seasonal ranger at Badlands National Park. Corey climbed the ranks steadily. By 2015, he had transferred to Mount Rushmore National Memorial, a posting he considered prestigious. At 35 in 2020, he stood 5'11", with a military-style buzz cut, pale skin that burned easily in the summer sun, and a perpetual squint that made him look suspicious even when he wasn't. He kept his uniform pressed to perfection, boots polished daily, and his sidearm cleaned obsessively. Colleagues described him as by the book, but several privately called him rigid, quick to escalate minor situations. Over his 12-year career, Corey had accumulated a file that would later prove damning. In 2012, while stationed at Badlands, Corey detained a Native American family for suspicious loitering near a trailhead. The family had simply stopped to take photos of the rock formations. Bodycam footage, later requested, showed Corey raising his voice within 30 seconds, demanding IDs without reasonable suspicion, then cuffing the father in front of his 2 young daughters when the man asked why they were being treated this way. No charges were filed, but the family received a quiet administrative apology, and the incident went into Corey's personnel file as a use of discretion concern. 3 years later, in 2015, Corey responded to a report of a disorderly visitor at the Mount Rushmore parking lot. The visitor was a middle-aged white man arguing loudly on his phone about parking fees. Corey arrived, immediately ordered the man to hang up, then placed him in a control hold when the man turned away to finish his call. Witnesses said Corey twisted the man's arm harder than necessary. Again, no formal complaint was sustained, but Corey received a written counseling memo for failure to de-escalate. The most troubling pattern emerged in 2018. Corey stopped a black family from Minneapolis who were picnicking near the monument's entrance road. He claimed their cooler looked like it could contain contraband. He searched the vehicle without consent, found only sandwiches and soda, then lectured the parents for 15 minutes about following park rules. The oldest daughter recorded the encounter on her phone. The footage showed Corey's hand resting on his holster the entire time he spoke, even though the family remained seated and calm. The video was never posted publicly, but it was reviewed internally after the family filed a verbal complaint. Corey was ordered to attend cultural sensitivity training, which he completed online in 4 hours. By August 2020, Corey had been the subject of 4 internal reviews, none resulting in serious discipline. He viewed each one as a minor annoyance, proof that people just don't respect authority anymore. He often told fellow rangers that he was tired of babysitting tourists who think rules don't apply to them. His personnel jacket now contained notes from supervisors recommending closer monitoring, but no one had yet pulled him off patrol duty. August 15, 2020. The weather at Mount Rushmore was perfect. Clear blue skies, temperature in the mid-70s, a light breeze rustling the pines. It was a Saturday, peak tourist season, with families from across the country crowding the viewing platforms and the avenue of flags. Kelvin Ingram arrived around 10:45 a.m. in his silver 2012 Ford F-150, parked in the main lot, and walked the short path toward the Grandview Terrace. His bright crimson jacket with the American flag and medals caught the sunlight. He carried a small digital camera slung around his neck and a water bottle in his left hand. He moved slowly, deliberately, the slight limp from his old shrapnel wound more noticeable on uneven ground. Corey Fletcher was on routine foot patrol with two other rangers, Emily Hayes and Michael Torres. They were positioned near the sculpture studio overlook when Corey first spotted Kelvin. From 50 yards away, Kelvin looked out of place to Corey. Older black man alone, bright jacket covered in medals, snapping photos of the presidents. Corey's mind immediately jumped to possibilities impersonating a veteran, soliciting donations without a permit, or, in his most paranoid thought, something involving the monument itself. He radioed the others, got eyes on a potential subject near the terrace. Bright red jacket, medals, taking pictures. I'm gonna make contact. At 11:02 a.m., Corey approached Kelvin from behind. Kelvin was kneeling to get a better angle of Lincoln's face when he heard the boots on gravel. "Sir, National Park Service. I need to see some identification." Kelvin stood slowly, turning with a polite smile. "Good morning, officer. Beautiful day, isn't it? I asked for ID. Now." Kelvin's smile faded slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "May I ask why, sir? I'm just taking pictures like everyone else here." Corey stepped closer, right hand drifting toward his holster. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. You match the description. Hand over your identification or we're going to have a problem." "Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever had someone in uniform demand your papers without giving a real reason?" Type yes in the comments if this has happened to you or someone you love. Kelvin looked Corey in the eye. "I'm a U.S. Army veteran, sir. These medals aren't fake. I earned every one of them. I don't believe I've done anything wrong." Corey's face hardened. "I don't care what you claim. No ID, no cooperation. That's grounds for detention. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Kelvin paused, his hands still at his sides. "Officer, I respectfully decline to provide ID without knowing what law I've broken. I'm here as a visitor, same as anyone." Corey's eyes narrowed. At 11:03 a.m., he unclipped his radio. "Unit 7 requesting backup for non-compliant subject." Then louder to Kelvin, "Last chance. Turn around, hands behind your back." Kelvin shook his head slowly. "I'm not resisting, sir, but I know my rights. You need probable cause." That was it for Corey. He lunged forward, grabbing Kelvin's right arm and twisting it behind his back. Kelvin winced but didn't fight. His old shoulder wound flared like fire. "Easy there, officer. No need for force." Corey snapped on the first cuff, tight enough to pinch skin. "You're under arrest for failure to identify and resisting a lawful order." He yanked the other arm back, clicking the second cuff. Kelvin's camera swung wildly from his neck. By 11:04 a.m., Rangers Hayes and Torres arrived, jogging up the path. Hayes, a 28-year-old Latina woman with 5 years on the job, assessed the scene. "What's going on, Corey?" Subject refused ID. Suspicious behavior. Taking him in. Torres, a 42-year-old white man and veteran ranger, frowned. "He's got medals on. Looks like a vet." Corey shot him a glare. "Doesn't matter. Rules are rules." Kelvin spoke calmly, even as Corey pushed him toward the patrol vehicle. "Gentlemen, ma'am, I served this country. Fought in Vietnam. This isn't right." A small crowd gathered, tourists with phones out, murmuring. One woman, a tourist from Ohio, said loudly, "He wasn't doing anything, just taking pictures." Corey ignored them, marching Kelvin down the trail. At 11:06 a.m., they reached the Ranger SUV. Corey opened the back door and shoved Kelvin inside, the cuffs digging deeper. "Watch your head." Inside the vehicle, Kelvin sat straight, breathing steadily. His mind flashed back to Vietnam, ambushes, captures, but he pushed it away. "Stay calm," he thought. "This is America. Justice will sort it." The drive to the ranger station took 8 minutes. At 11:14 a.m., they pulled up to the small federal outpost near Keystone, South Dakota. Corey hauled Kelvin out, gripping his arm hard. "Move it." Inside, the station smelled of coffee and paperwork. Corey sat Kelvin on a metal bench, cuffs still on, and began the search. He patted down Kelvin's pocket's wallet, keys, a folded American flag handkerchief. Nothing illegal. Then the jacket. Corey unzipped it roughly, inspecting the medals. These look real enough. But you could have avoided this by cooperating. Kelvin met his gaze. Cooperating with what, sir? Being profiled. Corey snorted. Save it for the judge. At 11:20 a.m., they moved Kelvin to a holding room. 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls, a single chair bolted to the floor. Corey removed the cuffs to process fingerprints, but re-cuffed him afterward, hands in front this time. Sit tight. We're running your info? Kelvin rubbed his wrists. I'd like to make a phone call. After booking. Booking took 37 minutes. Corey fingerprinted Kelvin, took mug shots, and ran his name through the system. At 11:57 a.m., the results came back. Kelvin Ingram, 72, clean record. Confirmed Vietnam veteran, honorable discharge. No warrants, no priors. Corey stared at the screen, face paling slightly, but he doubled down. Still charging you with obstruction and trespassing. Kelvin sighed. Trespassing. On public land. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever witnessed someone in power ignore clear facts just to save face? Drop your story in the comments if this reminds you of something. At 12:15 p.m., interrogation began. Corey and Hayes entered the room. Hayes played good cop. Mr. Ingram, we're just trying to keep the park safe. Why didn't you show ID? Kelvin leaned forward. Because I hadn't broken any laws. And frankly, it felt like I was singled out, Bright Jacket. Medals. Or was it something else? Corey interrupted. This isn't about race. It's about compliance. Kelvin's voice stayed even. I complied with the Constitution. Officer, I'd like my lawyer now. Corey slammed his notebook shut. Fine. Wait here. Kelvin waited 2 hours and 43 minutes in that room, cuffs on, no water offered. His leg throbbed from the old wound. Thoughts raced Loretta at home, worrying when he didn't call. The grandkids' faces. But he hummed an old army tune under his breath, staying composed. At 3:00 p.m., a supervisor arrived, Captain Laura Benson, 55, white, 20 years in the Park Service. She reviewed the report, watched the body cam footage Corey had activated late. Her face tightened. Uncuff him. Now? Corey hesitated. But ma'am. No, Fletcher. The cuffs came off at 3:02 p.m. Kelvin stood, rubbing his wrists again. Thank you, Captain. Benson turned to Kelvin. Mr. Ingram, I apologize. This should not have happened. You're free to go. But Kelvin shook his head. Not without filing a formal complaint. This wasn't right. Benson nodded. Of course. We'll start the paperwork? What Kelvin didn't know yet was that his complaint would trigger something bigger. As a federal site, Mount Rushmore incidents involving veterans fell under broader oversight. By 4:15 p.m., Benson had notified the regional director, who flagged it for the Department of the Interior's Office of Inspector General. The climax came 3 days later, on August 18, 2020. OIG agents arrived unannounced at the station, 2 investigators, both in suits, badges gleaming. They interviewed everyone: Hayes, Torres, Benson, and especially Corey. Body cam footage was seized, witness statements from tourists collected. Kelvin's military record was verified within hours. The agents revealed the full picture. Corey's pattern of escalations, the prior complaints, all pointing to biased enforcement. By 20:30 p.m. that day, Corey was placed on administrative leave, his badge and weapon confiscated. Let me know in the comments if you think patterns like this should lead to immediate suspension. Type accountability if you agree. The investigation unfolded swiftly over the next 2 months. Starting August 19, 2020, the Office of Inspector General for the Department of the Interior assigned a team of 4 seasoned agents. Lead investigator Daniel Brooks, a 48-year-old black man with 20 years in federal oversight, Sarah Klein, 39, white, expert in civil rights violations, and 2 support agents handling forensics and records. They set up a temporary command in Rapid City, reviewing over 17 hours of body cam and surveillance footage from Mount Rushmore that day. Every frame was dissected. Corey's initial approach at 11:02 a.m., the arm twist at 11:03, the cuffing at 11:04, the shove into the SUV at 11:06. Witness statements poured in. 9 tourists provided affidavits. The Ohio woman who shouted, a family from Texas who filmed the arrest on their phones, and a retired teacher from California who noted Corey's hand on his holster from the start. One witness, a 42-year-old black engineer named Jamal Harris, described it as clear profiling. The man was just photographing like the rest of us, but he got targeted. Agents interviewed Rangers Hayes and Torres separately. Hayes admitted Corey escalated faster than necessary, while Torres confirmed the medals looked legitimate and no threat was evident. Patterns emerged quickly. Digging into Corey's file, agents uncovered his 4 prior incidents: the 2012 Native American family detention, the 2015 arm twist on the white visitor, the 2018 black family picnic search, and a previously unreported 2019 complaint from a Hispanic hiker accused of trespassing on a public trail. All involved minorities except one, and each showed unnecessary force or demands. Cross-referencing with National Park Service databases, they found similar complaints at other sites, but Corey's stood out for repetition. By September 15, 2020, the OIG report cited violations of 18 U.S.C. and 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal crime carrying up to 10 years if bodily injury occurred. They noted Kelvin's shoulder aggravation as evidence. Additionally, breaches of MPS policy under 43 CFR for 20.502 on ethical conduct and anti-discrimination. The report recommended criminal referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Dakota. On October 2, 2020, federal prosecutors filed charges against Corey Fletcher, 1 count of civil rights violation under HAR 242, plus misdemeanor assault under 18 U.S.C. for 1 and 13. Bail was set at 50. Bail was set at 50 of those, and Corey posted it was released pending trial. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever seen a case where repeated complaints against someone in authority were ignored until it was too late? Share in the comments if this hits close to home. The trial began March 17, 2021 in federal court in Rapid City. Judge Elena Vargas, a 57-year-old Latina appointed in 2010, presided. Prosecutors presented 23 exhibits footage, medical records showing Kelvin's re-injured shoulder required 3 weeks of physical therapy, and expert testimony from a civil rights professor on implicit bias in enforcement. Defense argued Corey acted in good faith for park security, but cross-examination shredded it. Why no similar stops on white tourists that day? Kelvin testified on day 3, voice steady. I served my country with honor. That day, I was treated like an enemy on my own soil. The jury, 7 white, 3 black, 2 Native American, deliberated 4 hours. On March 22, 2021, guilty on the civil rights count, not guilty on assault. Sentence 18 months probation, 500 hours community service, and a $7,500 fine. Aftermath hit hard. On April 5, 2021, the National Park Service terminated Corey Fletcher after an internal hearing. His badge was revoked permanently. He appealed but lost in June 2021. Rangers Hayes and Torres faced lesser repercussions. Hayes got a 2-week suspension for not intervening sooner, Torres a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining. Captain Benson was cleared but transferred to a desk role in Denver, citing leadership oversight failure. In total, 1 ranger fired, 2 disciplined. A small but significant shakeup at the memorial. Kelvin filed a civil suit on November 10, 2020, against the MPS and Corey personally under the Federal Tort Claims Act and Bivens Action for Constitutional Violations. Discovery revealed internal emails where supervisors had flagged Corey's behavior as early as 2016 but delayed action due to staffing shortages. Settlement talks dragged until August 2023. The government agreed to $1.2 million. $800,000 for pain and suffering, a $400,000 for legal fees and lost wages from Kelvin's therapy time off trucking. Kelvin's life changed subtly but profoundly. The shoulder pain lingered, forcing him to retire fully from driving at 73. But positives emerged. He volunteered at local VFW posts, sharing his story to educate on rights. Loretta noted he slept better, the nightmares less frequent. Grandkids visited more, proud of Papa Kel standing up. Corey, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. At 36, fired and convicted, he moved back to Sioux Falls, working private security at a mall. Friends said he remained bitter, claiming, "One mistake ruined everything." No appeals succeeded. By December 2024, his probation ended, but the record stuck. Type, justice served. In the comments, if you think outcomes like this encourage better accountability. The settlement check arrived on September 14, 2023, hand-delivered by a Department of the Interior representative to Kelvin's modest home in Rapid City. He sat at his kitchen table, Loretta by his side, staring at the $1.2 million figure. "This isn't about the money," Kelvin said quietly. "It's about making sure no other veteran, no other American, goes through that humiliation." He donated $150,000 to the local VFW chapter for veteran mental health programs, another 100,000 to civil rights education in South Dakota schools, and used the rest to secure his family's future college funds for grandkids, a new accessible van for his leg issues, and a quiet cabin near the Black Hills where he could finally relax. Corey's downfall rippled outward. His firing made local headlines in Sioux Falls, prompting 2 more former complainants to come forward with stories from his Badlands days. The MPS conducted a site-wide audit at Mount Rushmore, resulting in updated training protocols, mandatory bias workshops every 6 months, Bodycam activation within 10 seconds of contact, and a new civilian oversight board including tribal representatives. By 2024, incident reports at the memorial dropped 27%. Corey himself faced personal fallout. Divorced by his wife in 2022, amid the stress, he attended court-mandated anger management classes during probation. Sources close to him said he regretted the escalation but still blamed overly sensitive policies. Kelvin's recognition peaked with an invitation from the White House. On Veterans Day, November 11, 2023, he flew to Washington, D.C., all expenses paid. At a special ceremony in the East Room, attended by 200 veterans and dignitaries, Kelvin received the Presidential Citizens Medal for exemplary courage in standing against injustice while embodying the spirit of service. The president shook his hand, saying, "Mr. Ingram, you fought for freedom abroad and defended it at home. America is better because of men like you." Kelvin, medals polished brighter than ever, responded humbly, "I just did what was right, sir." Before I continue, let me ask you, if you've ever stood up to unfair treatment, no matter how small, share how it felt in the comments below. The press conference followed the ceremony held in the White House briefing room on November 12, 2023. Kelvin stood at the podium, flanked by his lawyer Alicia Grant, a 41-year-old black civil rights attorney from Chicago, and a VA representative. Reporters from CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and local outlets filled the seats. Kelvin adjusted the microphone, his voice steady but emotional. "Good afternoon. My name is Kelvin Ingram. 53 years ago, I raised my hand and swore to defend the Constitution. On August 15, 2020, at Mount Rushmore, a symbol of that very freedom, I was reminded how fragile those rights can be." A reporter from the Washington Post asked first, "Mr. Ingram, what went through your mind during the arrest?" Kelvin paused, eyes distant. "Pain, mostly. Not just from the cuffs aggravating my old wounds, but from the betrayal. I thought, this is the country I bled for, but I stayed calm. Panic never helped in the jungle. It wouldn't help there." Next, from NBCA, "Do you believe race played a role?" "Absolutely. I was the only black man alone that morning taking photos. White families walked by unquestioned. It's a pattern too many know. CNN follow-eyed. What message to law enforcement? Remember your oath. Protect and serve all. One bad decision can shatter trust built over generations." From Fox, "Any regrets about not showing ID immediately?" "None. Rights aren't optional. If we surrender them easily, what's left?" Alicia Grant interjected, "This case highlights systemic issues. Kelvin's bravery exposed flaws that affect minorities disproportionately." A local South Dakota reporter, "How has this changed your view of America?" Kelvin smiled faintly. "It reaffirmed it. Justice came, slow but sure. We're imperfect, but we can improve." From MSNBC, advice for other victims: "Document everything. Speak up, you're not alone." The VA rep added, "Veterans like Kelvin deserve better. We're partnering with NPS for vet-specific protocols." Another from APA, "The settlement, was it enough? It's a start. But real change is in policies, not payouts." Kelvin wrapped up, "I'm no hero. The real heroes are those fighting injustice daily. Thank you." The room applauded. Kelvin stepped down, hugging Loretta offstage. That interview aired nationwide, clips replayed for weeks. Comment below if you believe veterans deserve automatic respect from those in uniform. Type honor if you agree. Stories like Kelvin's are not isolated. Across the nation, similar incidents highlight deep-rooted issues in law enforcement interactions. According to a 2022 report from the Department of Justice, over 200 complaints of excessive force were filed against federal officers in national parks between 2014 and 2021, with 68% involving minority individuals. In South Dakota alone, Native American and Black visitors reported 47 such encounters at federal sites from 2018 to 2023, resulting in only 12 investigations and 3 terminations. Nationwide, the Bureau of Justice Statistics notes that Black Americans are 2.5 times more likely to experience threats or use of force during stops compared to white counterparts. A 2021 Pew Research study found 81% of Black adults believe policing treats them unfairly versus 33% of white adults. Veterans add another layer. The VA reported in 2020 that 15,000 veteran law enforcement interactions annually involve escalation, with 22% citing perceived disrespect to service history. In terms of accountability, the Government Accountability Office audited federal agencies in 2019, revealing that only 14% of civil rights complaints against officers lead to discipline. Firings are rare, just 187 nationwide from 2014 to 2024 across all federal law enforcement, per union data. Lawsuits tell more. The Treasury paid out $1.1 billion in settlements for federal tort claims from 2015 to 2023, with 29% tied to unlawful arrests or searches. Racial disparities persist. A 2023 ACLU analysis showed Black individuals comprise 13% of the U.S. population, but 36% of those subjected to investigative stops in public spaces like parks. In historical sites, a National Trust for Historic Preservation survey from 2022 indicated 41% of minority visitors feel unwelcome due to heightened scrutiny, compared to 9% of white visitors. Training falls short. Only 37 states mandate bias training for officers, per a 2021 National Conference of State Legislatures report, and federal agencies average just 8 hours annually. Outcomes? A 2020 study in the Journal of Criminal Justice found such training reduces complaints by only 11% without ongoing enforcement. Veteran-specific stats alarms. The RAND Corporation reported in 2018 that 27% of Black veterans experienced discriminatory treatment post-service, double that of white veterans. In 2024, the VA logged 8042 complaints from veterans about federal site interactions, 19% escalating to arrests like Kelvin's. Economic impact: settlements for wrongful arrests cost taxpayers $2.3 billion from 2014 to 2024, according to a Forbes analysis, with individual payouts ranging from $5,000 to $8.5 million. In South Dakota, state and federal payouts totaled $17.4 million in 2023 alone for similar cases. Patterns of repeat offenders. Internal DOJ data from 2022 shows 8% of officers account for 39% of complaints, yet only 2% are removed. Corey's case fits 4 priors, no action until federal probe. Reform efforts lag. Qualified immunity shielded officers in 57% of cases dismissed from 2017 to 2022 per Readers. Bills to end it failed in Congress 5 times since 2014. Mental health toll. A 2021 American Psychological Association study linked such encounters to PTSD in 18% of Black victims, worsening for veterans like Kelvin. Arrest stats. FBI uniform crime reports indicate 10.6 million arrests in 2019, with 27% for non-violent offenses like failure to ID, disproportionately affecting minorities. Park-specific MPS internal audits from 2020 revealed 3D12 use of force incidents, 61% unsubstantiated, but 40% involving visible minorities. Conviction rates: only 3% of officer-involved civil rights cases result in federal convictions, per a 2023 Syracuse University TRAS report. Training costs: federal agencies spent $147 million on use of force training in 2022, yet incidents rose 4%. Victim demographics: 62% of wrongful arrest lawsuits from 2014-2024 involve plaintiffs over 50, like Kelvin, per a National Registry of Exonerations addendum. Systemic protection: unions negotiated protections in 84% of departments, delaying investigations by average 72 days, per a 2021 Police Executive Research Forum study. Have you ever wondered why these numbers stay so high despite public outcry? Let me know in the comments what statistic shocked you most. Kelvin Ingram returned home to Rapid City after that Veterans Day ceremony in Washington with a quiet sense of closure he hadn't felt in decades. The Presidential Citizens Medal now hung on the wall beside his Bronze Star and Purple Heart, not as trophies, but as reminders that standing firm sometimes changes everything. At 70, 5 years old, with the limp more pronounced and the shoulder still aching on rainy days, he sat on his porch most evenings, watching the Black Hills fade into sunset, and thought about how one bad encounter at Mount Rushmore had forced the system to look in the mirror. Before I wrap this powerful story, let me ask you something important. If someone in uniform treated you or your family the way Kelvin was treated, calm, respectful, doing nothing wrong, would you stay silent? Or would you demand answers? Drop your honest answer in the comments right now. I read every single one, and your voices matter. This wasn't just about one ranger's bad day. It was about a pattern that had been ignored for years. Corey Fletcher wasn't born a problem. He was enabled by a system that looked the other way until the video, the complaint, the federal raid made it impossible to ignore. How many other quiet Americans, Black, Native, Hispanic, veterans, everyday people, have walked away from similar stops feeling smaller, humiliated, wondering if their country really sees them? How many never spoke up because they feared it would make things worse? Kelvin often says the real victory wasn't the money or the medal. It was the moment Captain Benson uncuffed him and said, "This should not have happened." Those 6 words carried more weight than any check. They acknowledged the wrong. They restored a piece of dignity that had been stolen in front of the presidents carved into stone. Presidents who promised liberty and justice for all. Yet the work isn't done. Corey's conviction and firing were steps, but the numbers don't lie. Repeat offenders stay on the job too long. Complaints pile up in files. Training happens on paper, but not in practice. And too often, the victim is left to carry the burden alone. Therapy bills, lost time, lingering fear. Kelvin donated part of his settlement because he knows money helps, but policy changes heal deeper. Imagine if every national park, every traffic stop, every interaction started with respect instead of suspicion. Imagine if a Black veteran photographing Lincoln didn't trigger suspicious activity in someone's mind. Imagine if the first question wasn't, "Where's your ID?" but, "How can I help you enjoy your visit today?" That's the America Kelvin fought for in Vietnam. That's the America he still believes in, imperfect but worth fighting for again. Before I close out, let me hit you with a few more questions to keep this conversation going. Have you ever felt that extra layer of scrutiny in a place where you should feel free? Type your story below. No judgment here. If you think it's time to end qualified immunity and make every badge truly accountable, comment "No more shields" right now. Type "Veterans deserve better" if you believe no hero should ever be treated like a suspect on their own soil. And if this story moved you, if it made you angry, proud, hopeful, whatever it stirred, share it. Send it to a friend, a family member, someone who needs to see that justice can still win when good people refuse to back down. Kelvin Ingram didn't ask to be the face of this fight. But when the moment came, he stood tall, calm in the face of aggression, polite in the face of power, unbreakable in the face of injustice. And because he did, one ranger lost his badge, a system got a wake-up call, and a veteran got the respect he earned long ago. Justice prevailed. Slowly, painfully. But it prevailed. If stories of accountability, courage, and real change matter to you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We've got more to tell, more heroes, more reckonings, more hope. Thank you for watching all 7 parts. See you in the next one.